Yeah, it's almost like the Eagles in Buffalo, I guess, Kansas City, maybe you're starting to put them closer to that tier.
Mike Gill is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Gill, I'll tell you what, Mike, I just got back from the link at 3 o'clock. I'm probably on maybe 2 hours of sleep, and I don't know, just by the look of your face, that looks like the face of Victory Monday to me.
Yeah, I mean, another game where you win the game, you're I don't know. I mean, I know people are going to keep saying all I read last night is it felt like on social media, John Gannon, the defense, what's going on? And I'm thinking they're giving up 17 points. Like I feel like everybody wants John Gannon and every game to be called like it's the Super Bowl. And I'm like, they're not going to show all this exotic stuff. And maybe he doesn't have it. Maybe he doesn't have that in his bag. I don't know. If Cooper Rush is not the quarterback, he was horrible last night, in my opinion. If he's not the quarterback, what happens in that game? I don't know. I mean, Dallas reeked of desperation early. Fourth down, they go for it on their own side of the ball. They don't get it. They go down 17-0. They don't have the offense to come back from that. You can't make a decision that you can't come back from. And they actually got back into the game. But again, it's like this panic mode of Gannon got undressed. And he did. The third quarter, I thought that drive was horrible. I thought he did make an adjustment. I said, you got to give Dallas credit. They made a couple adjustments in the third quarter. Victory Monday, yeah. What does it mean? I'm not sure. The league stinks. The league stinks, Jeff Kerr.
Yeah, there's two things. The league stinks. I agree with you. The second thing, I'm tired of hearing, Dallas came back. No, they didn't. A comeback is when you actually take the lead. Every team makes games close. It's the National Football League. We see this throughout the league. All you have to do is be a red zone observer to notice this. To me, I just didn't think there was any real threat of Dallas winning that game. And the Eagles proved it when they went on that 13-play drive at the end of the game to take a two-score lead. The good teams seem to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like the Eagles in Buffalo, I guess, Kansas City, maybe you're starting to put them closer to that tier, is if they feel like it, they can throw it into another gear when they want to. I think they could have scored 40 last night. I mean, there was a point at that game, I'm laughing, I'm thinking, this Dallas defense – everybody's talking about how good they are. This is a JV game. I mean, they just are too small, and they just could not get a stop. The Eagles could do anything they wanted, and I feel like, again, the Eagles take their foot off the gas. Is it because they don't want to show anything? They don't have that killer? I don't know what it is. Why did they stall out when the third quarter comes? Now, I think there's a couple of things that could be, this is playoff time. This is not going to affect them in the regular season, I don't think. When they get to a playoff situation, these hot reads are becoming an issue. Guys are summing off the outside, and they're flushing Hurts away. He's got to have somebody right there. Boom, hot read. I think when Driscoll came in and Johnson went out, that threw off the timing of that offense. That was a clear problem for the third quarter there when Johnson came out. But once they got that back under their feet, Dallas had no answer. And you could talk about the tiers of teams in this league. That defense is a top tier. And they toyed with that defense last night. That defense was not on the same level of the Eagles offense. And I don't know that you're going to find a defense in this league that's much better than that. And that defense was ill-equipped to make a stop when they needed to.
You know what's funny about that? They would disagree with you 100%. And it's arrogance because in their minds, they shut down the Eagles offense in the second half. In their minds, they got back in the game. DeMarcus Lawrence still did not give Jalen Hurts any credit for his performance. He did not give it's so weird, Mike. Like in that locker room, they're like, well, we'll be fine. We got Dak back. we would have beaten them with that. It's almost like they had the excuse card line. We've been talking about loser energy all weekend with the baseball playoffs. I felt that energy in the Cowboys locker room last night.
Hey, listen, that's the way they have to think of it. Cooper Rush, he got us 4 wins, but if we had our guy, we think we had a shot. That's the mentality they need to have. They can't go into that locker room after the game thinking, we didn't have an answer for this team. And quite frankly, the Eagles did not play their A game last night. And Dallas, look, this comes down to, Jeff, when you need a stop and you have to get someone off the field, they couldn't do it. They just could not do it. They couldn't get a stop on 3rd down. The Eagles went for it they had a shot to change the complexion of this game in the first drive of the game. The Eagles on 4th and 4 went for it, and Dallas. They went off sides. And, that's their problem constantly. They just can't get out of their own way. They have a chance late in the game to make a stop, and the Eagles went down the field and undressed them. They could not get a stop. The good teams, when you have to make a stop, forget who the quarterback is. The defense has to get off the field. And when Dallas got back into that game, they could not get off the field because Philadelphia said, all right, you're back in this game. Let's put our foot back on the gas and see if you can stop us. They couldn't do it.
Dallas had a lot of dumb penalties last night, too. Like you said, the 4th and 4 going off sides, the Micah Parsons taunting penalty, which I thought was completely stupid, probably isn't called 5 years ago. But it's called now, and Dallas Goedert basically went to represent. You hear what he just said to me? And Trayvon Diggs getting unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in the end zone after I think it was the touch. I'm trying to remember. I was trying to do like 50 things at once, but
they scored the touchdown. The Devonta Smith, they scored the touchdown, and Diggs got the penalty, and the Eagles ended up going for 2 because of the penalty.
That's right. Yeah. So, and I'm just trying to think to myself, wow, the Eagles are really in this team's heads. I think Dallas really felt – and look, I would agree with them 100%. I think their defense is really good, but Eagles –
I do too, and I don't know where the Eagles are going to get challenged like that defensively again until they play Dallas. I'm trying to go through quickly. We talked about Green Bay in Week 12. Well, they got destroyed. Yeah, I watched most of that game yesterday. They were not competitive. Not competitive. Their defense was not competitive against the Jets. They can't move the ball, Green Bay. The offense is so limited. They have no playmakers. They can't get anybody open. They just can't get guys open. So other than that, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I'm trying to go back. Tennessee is a tough team because they're physical.
Their defense is bad too. They give up a lot of big plays.
Yeah,
it might be the Giants, Mike. That might be the next good defense they play.
The Giants, the Giants will be an interesting game, I think, now because they'll make it an ugly type of game. They don't have that playmaker on offense on the outside. I think the Eagles can do a good job against Barkley, if they game plan for that, and then you ask the corners to say, hey, they're limited on the outside. Look, I don't know when they're going to get challenged. I don't know that they're not going to win 42-7 every week. We do see that for whatever reason. So if you want this team to have these beautiful, aesthetically pleasing victories, you're probably not going to get that for whatever reason. They're not putting complete games together, and it's been good enough.
I might have an answer when they could play a good defense again. It might be after the bye if a certain player comes back. TJ Watt.
Well, they play Pittsburgh, who, what's going on with Tampa Bay? My gosh, this is 3 weeks in a row where you're looking at them and wondering what has gone wrong with that team. But, yeah, maybe. I don't know that it'll matter. I really don't. I thought Collinsworth brought it up to light last night. What are you going to do? How do you stop? I mean, I think they went after Parsons perfectly. I talked about it Friday. We had Mike Golick on my show, and he said, look, I played with Reggie White. We knew all the time he wasn't going to get blocked. People were going to come right. They're going to leave him, trying to run right at him. And we talked about it on my show that's what you do with Parsons. They highlighted it all night. Parsons didn't know what was going on. Now, I think he settled in and had a little bit better impact. But, look, in the end, they could not get a stop. That's what it comes down to. You got to get stops. If you want to come back in that game, you could have Roger Staubach playing quarterback. If you can't get a stop, it doesn't matter. Cooper Rush was bad last night, but their defense, when they needed them the most, could not get off the field. And their defense even with Dak Prescott, is the hallmark of that team. And if their defense can't get off the field, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And they could not get off the field when it mattered most. They had a shot to win that game last night. They were down. Give them credit. They fought their way back, but their defense let them down.
Here's another aspect about this Cowboys defense. And again, very good defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They did not last night. I think this is why the Eagles are 6-0. When was the last time the Eagles had a turnover? Was it Jalen Hurts' pick six against Jacksonville 2 weeks ago?
Who'd they play last week?
Arizona.
I think Arizona got – no, the Arizona, I think, had an interception early in that game.
Yeah, but it was taken back.
Oh, yes, that's right. You're right. Yeah. So, yeah, that gets Arizona. No, I mean, look, the Eagles aren't turning the ball over. They're causing turnovers. That's the thing. I used to do a show with Darwin Walker, who played for the Jim Johnson defenses.
Yeah, legend, by the way. I love Darwin Walker.
Darwin was great, a defensive tackle, and he used to say all the time, Mike, these fans, all they care about is sacks. And when you look up at the scoreboard, Jim Johnson would say, don't let that score get over 17. I don't care how we get there. I don't care how many yards you guys give up. I don't care what they do. Don't give up more than 17 and we'll win most games. That's what's going on right now. People are getting so frustrated with the defense and, Dallas went right down the field. The scoreboard said 17. And I know Dak Prescott didn't play and Cooper Rush isn't any good. But at the end of the day, they gave up 17, and that's the recipe for most defenses to win. If you give up 17, you're going to win most weeks, especially with this offense. So you can be as frustrated as you want to be. If the scoreboard only gives up 17 points, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, Cooper Rush, too. At one time in the first half, he had a 1.0 passer rating. Like, when I was talking to people at CBS last night, after the game, we're like, what takeaway should we have? Because I was heading down the locker room. And my buddy Jared Dubin, who is a Cowboys fan, said, well, Jeff, in reality, Cooper should have probably had 7 or 8 interceptions. I'm like, yeah. There were a lot of Jalen Hurts talks about food on the table. There was a lot of food on the table for that team.
Well, listen, there's 2 ways you could look at this. What a lot of Eagles fans want is you want to rush and blitz and force him into mistakes. Or you put coverage and make him try to make reads that he probably can't make and throws into coverage that he's probably going to get picked. So do you want sacks and rush him, or do you want him to be confused and end up with interceptions? Well, how many interceptions did he have last night? 3, 4? He could have had 7 or 8. So it's just a different way to get to the same result, right? We like the aesthetically pleasing sack. John Gannon chose to make him read coverage, and he couldn't do it last night.
Does it bother you the Eagles don't seem to make the halftime adjustments right away in the third quarter? It feels like the third quarter. Everybody wants to talk about their second half, but it feels like the third quarter is the quarter, to me, where teams kind of creep back into these games.
Does it bother me? I don't know, man. It's tough. This team, it just seems that they're so much better. And I hate to say that. Like, I don't want to be – but the talent disparity this team is good. They're deep. It's like watching a good basketball team, and you're like, man, they just roll guys off the bench. There's 8 deep. They're 9 deep. They're 10. It's like a good hockey team that just rolls 3 lines out at you. They're good. They're deep, and they're not going to play – now, you would say if you want to win the Super Bowl, you got to play a full 48-minute game. You got to play you can't have these lapses. Maybe you can. Who knows? I mean, look, we just seen with the baseball team right now. It's what happens on that day. This game's over. You move on and get ready for the next team. And it matters what kind of matchups they have. What talent do they have to match up with your talent? Yeah, they need to play a more complete game. That would be the next thing that we want to see from this team is they got to play a more complete game. But even playing not complete games, they've been completely dominant. I mean, at what game this year are you like, well, I guess I think the Detroit game was the one game this year where you felt that maybe Detroit could have won that game. No?
I would agree with you. Yeah, that was their biggest scare. You're right. I want to bring this
I
up.
don't know. Like, if you look back at the game, Jeff, you're okay. They won today 26-17. The Eagles could have scored 45 points if they felt like it last night, I felt like.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I definitely felt like, as Jalen Hurts said, there was food left on the table. They could have moved the ball at will if they wanted to. I mean, it really could have been, it was what, 23 and a half, could have been 30-3 a couple times. Like, there were guys open on some of those plays, and there were lanes created.
And that's the Minnesota game. What other game did they score 24 at half and then score again in the second half? They had a couple games like that where they scored 24 in the first half. Minnesota was one. I can't remember who they played in week 3, but it happened in week 3 too, where I think if they really felt like it, they probably could have put up 45 points in those games. For whatever reason, though, they're not. And is that a concern? Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah, here's one, Mike. Because the Bills, they beat the Chiefs yesterday. And because I think the Bills and the Chiefs are on that pedestal, I'll always say that. Is it fair to add the Eagles to that pedestal? The Bills, the Chiefs, and you know what? We'll put the Bills up. Is it fair to put the Eagles up with the Bills right now?
Yeah, I think it's the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. However you want to rank them. If you want to go 1, 2, and then there's a little drop to 3, if you want to do that. The fourth team is way off the blip, way back there. And quite frankly, I don't even know who the fourth team in the conversation is. I don't. I mean, you could say maybe Dallas.
The Vikings, Eagles beat them.
Right. Minnesota, they've won 4 in a row. The Eagles demolished them. And that doesn't mean they demolish them again if they played. Last time we talked, I think you brought Baltimore up. They got beat yesterday.
Is it the Giants, Mike?
It's funny. We don't even want to bring them into the conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think that the sad part is it could be the Giants, and they're a big step behind, I think, a lot of these teams. What is their big step? I think the quarterback is just certainly a step behind. They don't have a playmaking player on the outside, on the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line is suspect. But it shows you how much culture can matter, especially in a league filled with parity. And trying to think of a 4th and 5th team, the fact that we just put Dallas 4 and possibly the Giants 5 says what?
I'll tell you, this is how crazy this league is. I think the Jets are a legit football team. And I said that yesterday. I think they were going to give the Packers all they could handle. Not only did they do that, they won. When you watch this Jets team, and you watched the game yesterday, they have the makings of a top 10 team in this league. I would not be shocked they made the playoffs this year.
No. I think right now, because the league is so mediocre, there's so many just average teams. Everybody beats everybody. Anybody can beat anybody. That, the Jets are in that mix too. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's a team I'm forgetting that you're just like, wow, I can't believe it. No, I mean, really, you could say, and look, again, I'm not saying the Eagles would beat the Bills or beat the Chiefs, but how could you not put them at least? Somebody has to be in that conversation as the top 2 or 3 teams. Someone has to be there. So just saying that the Eagles are on that level with them doesn't mean that necessarily they would beat them in a 1-to-1 game, but I don't think that they would. It's not possible. I mean, this league is. I wake up, Jeff, watching football yesterday, thinking, man, this league is just filled with so much mediocrity that we thought Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and the Rams would be shoo-ins for playoff. They all lost. The Rams looked terrible yesterday again. Did the Rams end up losing that game?
They beat Carolina, but they did not look good.
No, the last I looked, they were losing. It was 13-something, and I didn't even think to check back on them.
And they pulled away. I'll tell you, I have the final score up right now. It was 24-10. They won.
Gotcha. Okay.
So here's one for you. Who are the top 5 teams in the NFC? Eagles are 1.
Well, Philadelphia, Dallas, the Giants are definitively 3 of them right now.
Yeah.
And then I guess after that, San Francisco, who lost yesterday, right?
By the way, they got so many injuries. Here's a stat for you, Mike. You know they only had 2 defensive starters yesterday that either were not injured before the game or did not leave the game for any point with an injury.
Yeah, no, that team, and I thought yesterday Atlanta could sneak up. Atlanta's starting to be a team that's sneaking up on people.
It could be 5-1.
Minnesota would be in the top 5, right?
What about Seattle? What do you make of them?
Oh man, I mean, it's funny because their best offensive player is their wide receiver, and he hasn't been a part of basically any of these wins, right?
Essentially,
the Cardinals have been a much better road team than a home team, and then they lost yesterday on the road. They were terrible yesterday offensively. They're going to get DeAndre Hopkins back, so that could change their fortunes. But I just don't think that team's anything better than average. No, I don't think Seattle's one. It's Minnesota, Dallas, the Giants, San Francisco, Philadelphia. They would be the 5.
So this is me being a troll here. The NFC South sucks. It absolutely is terrible. The Panthers stink. We all know that. The Saints, I think they're no good either, but they're in it. The Falcons are more than in it. They're a rough in the passer penalty from pretty much being in first place in that division right now. And you got the NFC North, who's got the terrible Bears. The Lions can't win a game all of a sudden. They never can. And Packers look bad. I mean, the Vikings may run away with that.
Well, listen, the Saints played yesterday with no Olave, Michael Thomas was out, and no Jameis Winston.
And they ran the ball for 230 yards.
Right. Well, let's see what happens when they get that full brigade back. They could slip. I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying they could be one of the 5. Look, this is every week. It's this team wins. Well, you haven't played anybody. Well, you beat this team. My buddy says to me last night that he was betting Dallas because he thought that they had played a tougher schedule. The Eagles haven't beaten anybody, so I'm going to bet Dallas. I said, well, nobody's beaten anybody. Dallas beat the Rams, who can't get out of their own way right now. The Bengals, who don't look the same. And other than that, they beat the Giants. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Mike, it's really fun. Baseball and football are starting to have a lot of comparisons this year. I was that guy who detracted the Mets, detracted the Braves. Well, who have they really played? You play the Marlins, you play them. You're beating the teams you're supposed to beat. Let's see what happens if you play a team with a pulse. And look, they're out now because they play teams with a pulse. And it's kind of like that with football. Like I feel like the Eagles are beating good teams, the Bills are beating good teams, Kansas City's beating good teams. Outside of that, who's beating who?
Nobody's beating anybody. When the Bills beat the Chiefs yesterday, that's about the only game you could say, all right, now that's a game that I know you beat a good team at the end of the day, right? I mean, Buffalo going on the road to beat Baltimore 2 weeks ago, you thought, okay, and then Baltimore, look, if baseball shows us anything, I said this all year, like, the Padres were 5-14 against the Dodgers. And then they played them in the playoffs and they knocked them out. People get so wrapped up into what happens on one particular. I don't understand how this has been happening for long enough now that sports fans should have altered their thinking that if you lose or don't look particularly good 1 week against a certain opponent, that doesn't mean you're not going to look good the next week, or against the same opponent look different. Look at the game yesterday. Last time the Bills and Chiefs played, it was 42-38. And I said on my podcast, Belief in the Bets, this game's going under. Everybody thinks the game is over. There was like 86% of the money was going over. I said, this game's going under. These two teams are going to watch that and make the adjustments to change the style of the game. So whatever happened the last time they played has no bearing what happens in the next time they play. What the Eagles do this week has no bearing what they do next week. You prepare differently. You game plan completely differently. The other team has different personnel that changes the way that they do things. We have to stop taking what we see in this game and making that who you are long term.
I was on a lot of Bills and Chiefs radio shows this week, and I tried telling Bills Mafia this till my face turned blue. You can downplay this game all you want, but to me, the ultimate test to go to the Super Bowl, you got to get home field advantage. You got to make sure you play Kansas City in that freezing cold weather in January. Oh, no, we don't need that. Yes, you do. You need this game. They got it. Who the heck is going to take home field advantage away from them in the AFC? I don't think any other team outside Kansas City has 4 wins in that conference.
I would agree. And I think if you want to shift it back to the NFC East, that game last night was essentially for the number 1 seed, because you would imagine who else other than Dallas, maybe now the Giants. When the Eagles play the Giants, because the Giants' schedule coming up, they could very well only have 1 loss when they play Philadelphia. I mean, their schedule, I think they play Detroit next week, if memory, or maybe that's Dallas.
Jacksonville first and then Detroit. They're both coming up.
Yeah, they've got a run of games too that are very winnable. The Giants do. So when you start to have these higher profile NFC games and you're Philadelphia, you've got to now have the mindset of home field advantage. And that's what every NFC game for them, especially with Dallas the next time. If Dallas, let's say Dallas loses, look, you've now beat them head to head and you have a 2-game advantage on them in the division. That's a pretty sizable advantage with knowing the Eagles' schedule coming up. So now your next competitor for that home field advantage is Big Blue. That game turns into because who else in the NFC is going to be in play for home field advantage? Tampa Bay has how many losses now? 2 or 3?
They got 3 now. They're 3-3, and they probably should have 4.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't think of another team that is going to be within an earshot of them for that number 1 seed. But you're right about Buffalo. All these games now are all about getting home field, because that is a sizable difference maker when trying to get to a Super Bowl. Because you go back to 17, I don't know, and this is why Carson Wentz does get a lot of credit for that run. He got them to home field advantage for his play in the regular season. And without that, I don't know that Nick Foles goes on that run.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm looking at the Cowboys schedule right now. They got Detroit. They got Chicago. Probably should be 2 wins, right? This is why this win was so big. Then they got the bye week. But then you got this tough part of their schedule. They got a lot of primetime games here. At Green Bay, at Minnesota, versus the Giants, which, by the way, the NFL made the Giants the token win for the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That might not be guaranteed anymore. Versus Indianapolis. They got like 4 straight national TV primetime games, and then they got an easy stretch where they face Philadelphia. But I don't know, Mike. I don't think this Week 16 game may not be worth as much as the Cowboys might think it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. You just mentioned their schedule. They got a nice little. They got a tough patch, and with that. Now Green Bay is just average. Minnesota, I don't think they're anything better than just a good team. But yeah, I thought last night was a really separator of these 2 teams. Philly now takes the 2-game, plus they have the 1 game. And I don't know. Minnesota, who you've beaten head-to-head, only has 1 loss. So I guess if they kind of linger, that kind of keeps the pressure on you a little bit. But other than that, the Eagles right now have a very clear path to get that number 1 seed. And it's very important. The Giants would be the Giants, because you haven't played them yet, are the next. Think about that. They are the next most competitive team for the number 1 seed right now in the NFC playoffs.
I look at their schedule this way. You got the tiebreaker now over Dallas. You got the tiebreaker over Minnesota for home field. Now then, there's 2 games I think that they need to get. The Giants and the Packers. If they do that, I don't care what they do. I think they're going to be home field in the NFC, and they're going to get that bye. And Philadelphia is going to be as loud, if not even louder, than it was this weekend. Citizens Park.
Yeah, and you have the Packer game is a Week 12 game. It's at home. I think it's a Sunday night.
So that will be the Black Helmets.
There you go. And then the Giant, you have that one stretch. Philadelphia has one stretch late in the year with 3 straight road games. That'll be interesting to see how they navigate their way through that. That's a spot where they could potentially, you might be 2 games up in the NFC and maybe have a week where you kind of lose focus on a 3rd straight road game. It's like Chicago, the Giants, and somebody else is in there. I don't remember who. There's 3 straight. Dallas?
Are they home against Tennessee or are they away against Tennessee?
I think they play Tennessee at home.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who. Oh, yeah, because they play Houston on the road. So, yeah, Tennessee's definitely at home. Yeah, I'm trying to think. But, yeah, you're right. That Giants-Chicago stretch there. I mean, look, look, it's National Football League. You're going to lose games you shouldn't. But if we keep looking, it's like the Eagles are just that much better than the next couple teams they're facing, Mike. It's absolutely crazy.
And listen, I watched a lot of Giants yesterday. The 2 games that were on in our market were Giants and the Jets. So I had both them on at the same time. But I had the sound on the Giants game. And, what the Giants are doing right now, again, they don't have this flashy playmaker. I like the way, though, they got Wan'Dale Robinson involved. It's the first time I think he's really played for them. He gave them a little bit of speed from the slot, gave them a little something. I think the problem the Giants have when matched up with the Eagles is their offensive line. Their offensive line is still a little bit of an issue. They had some problems yesterday with Kenyon Drake. They could not stop the run yesterday. So I think the Giants are going to have some issues in that department. But right now, sadly, they're the next best competitor.
Who would have thought that after 6 weeks? Mike Gill, I'll be on later tonight. I promise I'll be up a little better. I promise my eyes will look better. I need to get some sleep, Mike, and I'm sure you do too, my friend.
Listen, I know somebody who went to the Flyers game Thursday, the Phillies game Friday, the Phillies game Saturday, left the Phillies game Saturday, went to the Flyers game Saturday, went to the Eagles game last night, and he's already up and watching us right now.
That's dedication. Let me tell you, just going all those sporting events is dedication. I went to the Phillies game Friday and covered the Eagles game last night. I thought that was enough. I got to give him credit there.
Listen, Tuesday night, the Flyers play the Sixers opener and the Phillies have their opener. This is a perfect week for the Eagles to be on a bye. Literally, this is the best week possible that the Eagles could be on a bye. The Phillies have the National League Championship week all to themselves. And I thought Dallas week kind of got lost in the sauce a little bit last week. So the fact that there's no Eagles game this week, I think it's worked. You could not ask for a better scheduling situation with the Phillies getting this highlighted all to themselves. Because quite frankly, and good for the fans, the baseball playoffs, National League Division Series, it should have kind of overshadowed a football regular season game, even with it being Dallas. The Eagles now have this bye week. They can kind of go into hiding, and the Phillies will own this week all to themselves. The Sixers opener on Tuesday is going to get lost in the sauce. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and the Sixers are good. That's the irony of it. I think they're going to be a really good team this year, too. But you know what, Mike, you're right. It didn't feel like Dallas week at all for most of the week until Sunday, so I would agree with you. But, hey, you know what? When the Eagles do come back, I think they're going and look, the Phillies may still be in it, but I think the Eagles are going to have all the attention that they deserve because they're the only unbeaten. Once again, Mike Gill, always a pleasure, my friend. I'll talk to you at 5:30 tonight.
All right, everybody. See you.